Hey, busy business owners. I am here today with another entrepreneur taking action, Charlie Moon. Charlie is a unique person whose accomplishments include selling a used bottle of water for $700 as a benefit auctioneer and helping entrepreneurs find the clarity they need to scale their business. I'm getting the scoop today on how he does it. Okay, so I know we got to get into the business part, but I have to hear the story on the bottle of water for $700, the used bottle of water for $700.
Well,
What was that?
first, thank you for letting me be here. This is fun, and I appreciate getting to do this. So 38.2% of what I do in the course of a year is work with nonprofits to help them turn their events into fundraisers rather than just parties. And the balance of what I do is the basis of my book called How to Turn Order Takers into Rainmakers. And so when I start a benefit auction a lot of times, and I do those for visibility, and then I started doing those in 2003 for visibility. And then what I learned is, oh, there's a business here. So I worked with a benefit auction coach. I worked with the National Auctioneers Association, became a benefit auctioneer, which is a certification you earn because there's lots of doctors out there and there's all kinds of doctors. You wouldn't take your kid to a dentist to have his broken arm fixed. Fair enough. And so I don't sell cars and cattle. I don't sell pots and pans. I don't sell real estate. I work with nonprofits to help those less fortunate. And so when I start a benefit auction, I will take a glass of water, or I'll take a dollar bill, or I'll take something worthless and I'll sell that. And what I've done is I've gone through the crowd and found a couple people, and I said, "Hey, you don't have to buy this. Just help me get it up off the runway, and we'll see what happens." And so the used glass of water that I sold for $700 is like the dollar bill that I sold for $3,000. And the point is, and I jack around with people and say, where are you going to find another dollar bill? And where are you going to find a used glass of water? Where are you going to find a dessert that this guy ate part of? And then when I get finished selling it and it sells for 300 or 3,000 or whatever it is, I say, folks, we're not here to get deals and bargains. We're here to help those less fortunate. And it sets the tone that people were there to raise money, because it's no secret we're there for a fundraiser. So let's raise funds rather than just, look for deals and bargains. So that's the story on that. Let's see, what else have I sold? Oh, used salads. The other night I did an event up in Nebraska and I sold a program that had a little kindergarten girl's picture on the front of it. And I went and found her in the crowd and asked her for her autograph. And so she's in kindergarten, so she could only print her name. It was 4 letters. And I said, is this you? And she said, yes. And she smiled, and I said, would you autograph this for me? And so then we sold 4 copies of this original picture autographed by this little girl for $1,000 a piece. So, $4,000 to a group that doesn't have any money really makes a big difference. So it's fun to do that. So that's the story.
Oh, that is such a neat way to do it. That is really awesome. And I think even the takeaway from the business side of it is you got to be, not afraid to be different.
That's right.
Not afraid to put people back in the heart of the mission and not just the activities and the actions.
Well,
so I think that's, great tie-in.
Thank you. Most nonprofits I work with on that side of the business have great passion for the mission, but they don't have a great plan and a great process on how to make money. So then I go in and pull the curtains back and show them how all this orchestrated spontaneity that looks like it just happens, but it's things like that I teach them that allows them to raise $500,000 in 20 minutes that I did just a few weeks ago, or always break records. I sold a parking place the other night for $7,000. So, that may not be a big deal, but to those people, that was a big deal. When the development director's printer doesn't work because they just don't have maintenance done on it because it's, that's a big deal when they raise that kind of money and the more fun people have, the more money they'll invest in the organization. So.
I think that's true for most business owners, isn't it? We've got a lot of heart and passion for our business, but not always, real clarity on how we're going to make money. I think that's across businesses. Well, good ones anyway. I'm sure there's some shady ones that are all about the money and don't have heart, but they're probably not listening to the show right now because they're not trying to learn.
when we started talking, you talked about focusing, and one of the things I talk about in my book is called focus on the outcome. And what that focus on the outcome is focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want. Because what happens a lot of times is people get focused on the problem, and they see a problem, and that problem turns into anxiety, and that anxiety turns into a reaction, and that reaction turns into another problem, and that turns into more anxiety. And guess what? We're in an anxiety management mode all the time. But if we get focused out there on the outcome that we want, then we will get there if we stay focused on that and take those little steps to get there. Now, are they all going to go all in the same direction all the time, and it's just going to be so easy and wonderful? No. But if you don't know where you're going to end up somewhere else. So when I work with organizations on the for-profit side of the equation, I tell them, what do you want to be doing in 5 years or 10 years, depending upon the organization? And then we'll back into what we need to be doing in the next 30, 60, 90 days. So if we have a minute, do you know anything about cards? About playing cards?
Bit.
You know a little bit about playing cards? So there's red cards and black cards, right? Mm-hmm. Would you pick red ones or black ones?
Red.
So the red cards are hearts and diamonds, right? Would you pick hearts or diamonds?
Hearts.
Hearts. And in hearts, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, King, Queen, Ace. Let's split it at 6 and go down, and 7 and go up. Would you pick the big ones or the little ones? The big ones, which leaves us 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? Would you pick the even ones of 2, 4, and 6, or would you pick the odd ones of 3 and 5?
3 and 5.
You'd pick 3 and 5, which would leave us 2, 4, and 6, right? So would you pick the 2 and the 4, which is 6, or would you pick the 6 of hearts?
6.
The 6 of hearts, that leaves us 2 of hearts and 4 of hearts. Would you pick the red 4 of hearts, or would you pick the red 2 of hearts?
2.
You'd pick the 2, which would leave us the 4 of hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wrote 4 of hearts on this piece of paper before we ever met. I did. Now, the reason that I show you that parlor trick, if you will, is because if we are focused on the outcome that we want, we will get there. But if you and I had started talking and I said, well, where you want to go? And I've got 52 choices on how to get there, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you have a million choices. And you're never going to make the perfect decision, but you got to make a decision and then make it perfect, fair enough. But what happens is we get focused on the problem, and I say, tell me a card. And you go, King of Diamonds. And I go, oh, no, that's not it. And then we'd have to go through 52 choices. So through this process of elimination, that's how I got you to say what I wrote down, which was 4 of hearts. It's that simple. Focus on what you do want.
That is really neat.
You think?
I like
Isn't that fun?
I think that is really neat. That is a really good example. I like that.
Thank you.
I know after I'd read that part about photo in your book, what that made me kind of mindful of, and bear in mind, I got 2 teenagers learning to drive right now. So, but it's like, you're telling them how to stay on the road. And it's like, you don't look right in front of you. You look further out to where you want to go.
Right.
It's like not so far out that you are getting lost, but far enough out towards the horizon. You have a plan for getting there. And if you ever stop looking at the horizon, that's where you start going off the road.
That's right. Because you see that anxiety, which creates a problem. And what happens with a lot of people, and buckle in and listen to this, because when I heard this, I went, oh my God, that's really smart. What happens is a lot of people solve the anxiety around the problem. They don't solve the problem.
Yep.
Right?
Well, it's kind of like in marketing, we talk about the Band-Aid and the cure.
Mm-hmm.
And for most people, you have to sell the Band-Aid. And then you have to earn the right to prescribe the cure.
There you go. There you go.
And it's
That's
like, because
good.
nobody really knows what it is they actually need. They have a problem and they want to solve it. They have a skint knee and they want you to put a Band-Aid on it so that it immediately feels better. But we know it's not going to heal the skint knee.
Right.
It's not going to make it all better.
Right.
But it's going to make them feel better about it right now, so that now we can talk about how do we heal it.
So what happens is they meet somebody that's talkative and outgoing, and they hire them as a salesperson. And then they figure out that mm-hmm. person won't go talk to anybody because they're scared to get outside their own office. right? They have an emotional
Yep.
short circuit. And so what they've done is they've solved the anxiety around the problem. They hired the wrong person. So I
Yep.
use an objective process to help hire people so that we hire the right person. Because I deal off of 3 P's. You got to have the right people, you got to have the right process, and you got to have the right plan. And if you don't have those
Yep.
3 P's in place, you'll have a 4th P, and that 4th P is problems. Fair enough.
Yep.
When Whole Foods sold to Amazon, I think they sold to Amazon for $14.3 billion with a B, something like that. It was north of $14 billion. Well, as I was doing some research for my book, I also found a company that I know the people that started the company, and they started about the same time as Whole Foods. And the same time that Whole Foods was bought by Amazon, this other company that did the same thing Whole Foods did went out of business. And they quoted the owner of it, the owner's daughter, in the Business Journal. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. She said, I always thought I would be here till I retire, but I'm not. I guess God has a plan for me, but I don't know what it is. I wish I did, but I don't. And the difference between somebody selling out for $14 billion and somebody closing out and just being done and giving up the ghost and going to work for somebody else is the people, the plan, and the process. So I would encourage your listeners to think about that and get focused on that outcome of what they do want, because most people are real good about telling us what they don't want. If you ask your spouse, where you want to go for dinner, and they'll say, well, I don't want Mexican food. No, I didn't ask you what you don't want. I asked you what you want. And most people can tell us what they don't want rather than what they do want.
That is so funny. When you mentioned that, what immediately came to mind for me was a TikTok video I saw once of teaching husbands how to do better with their wives and how to manage them. It was specifically that thing. He did exactly what you just did to me with the cards. And he gave her like a selection of choices and made her pick one or pick 2. And then he like added some other choices. And then I saw another one where he knew where he wanted her to go, and he knew that he was talking about food, but he didn't tell her food.
Okay.
He was like, do you want to go east or west?
Yeah.
Do you want to like sit outside, sit inside? Do you want to, and start thinking about the experience? But it was like how to get your wife to go eat where you want to go eat. And he was doing the exact same thing you just did with the cards.
I had so in the sales business years ago, and people don't do this anymore, but it was called the alternate advance, that it doesn't matter what, when you're setting an appointment, do you want to come in the morning or the afternoon? Oh, well, I can't come in the morning because I got to get my hair dyed blue, but I want to come in the afternoon. So I'll come in the afternoon. Well, it doesn't matter to me when you want to come, as long as you come to the appointment, right? So anyway, I was up in St. Joe, Missouri, and I had this lady come up to me, and I spent 20 years in the banking business, and 12 years of that was stand in front of people, teaching them how to do what I do, and which is connect the dots and get things done. And this lady came up and she said, this stuff that you teach us works. And I said, really? How's it work? And she said, that is called the alternate advance, that whichever you choose is right. She said, you know that? And I said, yeah. And she said, I haven't cooked in 6 months. She said, I told my husband that, and what I did was I said, I taught him this. I said, here's how to not have to cook. What does your husband not like? And she said, he doesn't like liver and onions. I said, okay. And where does he like to eat? And she said, he loves to eat at Outback. And I said, okay. So you say, honey, all I've got out in the refrigerator is liver and onions, or we can go to Outback. What's he going to choose? And she said, he's going to choose Outback. And she said, and because of you, I haven't had to cook for 6 months when I didn't want to. So thank you. So there you go.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love tying business stuff back to things that also work in real life, because it feels like when we put our business hat on, somehow we stop being the same humans we are out in real life most of the time.
Right.
And it's such an interesting phenomenon. It's like when there's so much overlap, it's so crazy.
Well, see,
now I know we talked about processes, and in your book, you have the 7-layer process.
I do.
And I think we're kind of dancing around that,
okay.
But do you want to allude to that specifically?
Yeah. So when I work the people I work with typically are professional services people who have all the technical skills in the world that they need. They're CPAs, they're accountants, they're bankers, they're commercial lenders with credit analysis skills. And all that won't do us any good if nobody knows who we are. Right? You can be the greatest entrepreneur out there, but obscurity is the scariest word out there, because if you're the greatest there is, but nobody knows it, it doesn't do you any good. And so as I was developing this process, I was working with people who were going to go from the old way of doing things through a transition when life changes over to the new way of doing things. And so what I do when I first start this process, the first layer of this business development process is to help them focus on the outcome so that they know what's coming. So when I relay these things to normal things that happen in everyday life, like teaching the lady how to not cook, what I'm doing is getting her to focus. This is how you're going to be able to do your job, is that you don't need to become somebody else to do this. You can just take who you are and what you have and learn a few things that work and be successful. That's what I've done for 40 years, is teach people how to do the undoable. Because trust me, accountants would all rather look at spreadsheets than strangers. And architects would all rather draw buildings than talk to somebody they don't know. And so that's my first step, is focus on the outcome and figure out what it is you want. And I've had people come up and say, I'm not going to, I want to draw buildings. I don't want to do this. And then they have a choice to make, but that's okay. They can make that choice. And I do a lot of work around Cartman's drama triangle and how to manage your way through that rather than being a victim and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the first step is focus on the outcome. And then the second step is helping them manage that transition when life changes. I was standing in the airport in St. Louis one night talking to a lady. The bank she worked for had just bought a bank with 178 employees. And I said, Betty, what are you going to do for those employees? And she said, well, next Tuesday, I'm going out and teaching them the products. And I said, no, what are you going to do for the employees? And she said, next week, I'm going to go out and teach them the products. And I said, Betty, I'm not deaf. I heard you. But what you're doing is that's for the bank. What we want to do is do something for these people and help them manage this transition of when life changes, because that transition is all that internal noise that we hear about, that self-talk we hear, which is, it's dangerous. Banks are real good about handling change and teaching you new loan documentation and new products and new, here's how you answer the phone and here's the PIN and here's what, but they're not real good about helping people. They weren't anyway real good about helping people through that emotional turmoil of going from what was to what is. And so then I start left of hello. And what I do is I help people get through an emotional short circuit that occurs before we say hello to somebody. That emotional short circuit keeps us from saying hello to that person. And what we can do is we cope, or we can do, but we can't do both. We can make sales calls or we can make excuses. And so those excuses manifest themselves in driving around the block just one more time, or saying, oh, that's Christina Hooper. I don't want to bother her. I'll go to, she's busy, right? She's busy. And so we do that and we make these excuses rather than making our competencies visible. Because if we don't say hello to enough people or make our competency of our organization visible to enough people, we'll be obscure and we won't be successful. I have a friend that I know that has been salesman of the month at the business he's in for 98 months in a row. And this guy,
oh, wow.
I think about that. And they're all on straight commission and 98 months in a row. And he is a great, what I call a natural self-promoter. And if you think about the people who are the most successful, if I ask you, name some singers or name somebody that's famous, you would name somebody that's visible. You wouldn't name somebody that's the most technically competent. You would name the person that is the most well-known, So I help them start left of hello, because if you don't say hello to enough people, you're not going to be successful. And then the next 3 steps are to get in the hello to infinity and beyond, where we say hello. And then what do we say? And we have to understand story structure. We have to understand, Randy Olson's big on talking about the and, but, and therefore of story structure, and the 65 words you start out with that gets people bobbing their head and getting them going, yes, tell me more, really, wow, how do you do that? And they want to hear what you do and how you're different than everybody else. And then I teach people the prospecting cadence, because we have to have the right prospect. For instance, when I'm working with a bank, we can't send these commercial lenders out to look for prospects that don't fit what the bank wants as far as loans. So we define what the prospects look like for the organization, and then we define the prospects that are right for that person. So we have a prospecting cadence, and I call them cadences because it's like a drum line. I like drum lines because they're all, they're 10 people standing there doing exactly the same thing, and it's because they've learned that cadence. And so a prospecting cadence, and then that engagement cadence where we're doing the story structure and asking the right questions. And, back in the day, they used to confuse professional services sales with product sales. And people would talk about that, they'd say, oh, open probes and closed probes will lead you to success. And that's not true, because that's a product sales cycle rather than a service cycle. So we teach them the right questions to ask that lead to success. And then we have to have a follow-up cadence, because I don't know how it is in your business, but in all the businesses I work with, you don't sell something the first time every time. Usually you leave a bunch of, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen because nobody answers their phone anymore. Fair enough. And so we have a follow-up cadence so that we stay in touch, because what happens is you'll run into people. We do that through accountability and consistency in my embrace model. It's every week we have a meeting with these people, and we find out what we have done to advance the process of the call. What have we done to make things move closer to getting something done? And maybe the getting something done is figure out how they're not a fit. We don't want them, but we're not just continuing to kick the can down the road. And so that's the 7-step process, and it works, and it helps people understand. It takes that undoable, because they don't know what to do. And I tell people all the time that a confused mind says no. And if they don't understand this process, that we're going to start first by helping you understand the transition you're going through. And then we're going to go through prospecting, engagement, and follow-up so that you really understand what you're doing. If they don't know that process, then they're just going to go, I'm lost. I don't know how to do that. I'm not going, because they're fearful. They fear they're going to fail.
I think there's so much truth to all of that. Like, I'm sitting here nodding my head. I feel like one of those little water birds, because I agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah.
I just need to put my cup of water over here in front of me and just.
There you go. Well,
there we go.
That's what you want. People deal out of 2 buckets. They deal out of an emotion bucket, and they deal out of a logic bucket. And what happens with a lot of people that have all these technical skills is they want to impress people by how much they know, and they talk to them out of their logic bucket. And that does not draw people in and get them engaged in your story. So we want to deal out of the emotion bucket, and we want to connect with people. And I teach people how to do that through their story structure. I was working with some architects the other day, and they were presenting some stuff. And I said, you guys sound like you're talking about the 1609 on the 2304. And they looked at me, and I said, see, nobody knows what you're talking about but you. Now, I know that's real impressive to you, but until you get these people engaged, because people buy things emotionally and then justify it, right? Logically.
Yeah.
And so if you're telling them about the 2309 on the 1604, they're sitting there going, I don't know what he's talking about. And then what happens is if you don't really think through your story and build some structure to it, it starts growing and growing and growing. And they start saying, and they just keep making the story bigger, because they're trying to impress rather than explain. They're trying to convince rather than connect. And you want people to connect with you. And the way they connect is through these stories.
Yep. Well, I mean, that, leads back to Story Brand and kind of what they teach over there. Like, I'm a Business Made Simple coach and be a Story Brand certified guide next month. But, you're supposed to be the guide, not the hero.
Yeah.
If you're talking about your features and services, then you're trying to make yourself the hero of their story. when you're supposed to guide them and they're the hero.
Right.
You're telling their story.
Right.
Like, I hearken it back to, story came from like so far back, like before we ever even could write, we gathered around a campfire and told a story. And if the person telling the story turned it into a biography, you get bored real fast,
Yeah, exactly.
Usually they're telling the story of, some great warrior who, went out and defeated the mighty mammoth and fed the village for all of the winter. And your role is help them find the spear, help them find the, valley they can lure the mammoth into to capture them. Like, you're supposed to guide them on how they can take the mammoth back to the village and save the day for the village for the winter. You're not supposed to go kill the mammoth.
Good job.
See?
Yeah.
Told a story on how to tell stories.
That's right. And I used to work with a person, and every time I'd explain something like that, she'd go, well, I hadn't thought of that. And the reason that people don't think of that is because they go to work and they go to work on processes and they go to work on systems, and they've got to get things delivered, right? And they've got to take care of the customers. Not very many people go to work to think about how they think. And so that's where they run into all this drama that I talk about. They run into that drama because they don't think about how they think, and they deal out of the dinosaur part of their brain, which just helps them survive. And that's where they get sucked down into that drama triangle, being a victim and looking for a rescuer and a persecutor who is somebody to blame for their lot in life. And they get sucked down into that because they're just surviving and reacting rather than dealing out of their executive brain and thinking and making decisions and moving forward.
Yeah, that was something I realized about, probably 10, 11 years ago now. Been in business for about 15 years. That all of the mentors that I was looking up to, all the people that I wanted to be when I grew up, they were students of business. Like, we like to see them as like they just have this natural talent, but the biggest natural talent they have is curiosity.
Yes.
And they go and they like put this effort into learning. They learn and they build systems, and when those systems fail, they learn more, and they keep asking questions, and they're consuming books, and they're watching podcasts like this one, hopefully. And they're students of business. They're students of humanity. They're students of thought. They're trying to figure out why things work the way they do. It's like some of the biggest entrepreneurs are the ones that took apart VCRs as children.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I asked one of the two brothers that started Pizza Hut, and they, as I was telling you earlier, they grew from nothing to 15,000 Pizza Hut restaurants. And I asked him, I said, did you ever think it would get this big? And he said, we were trying to get through college, and just figuring out processes to make it work. And, that's what got him to be able to serve pizza on the moon.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy, like what's possible when you break it down and think about it, and have the right people, have the right planning, and have the right processes, and what's possible when you can put all that together. I know we have talked about, you had so many systems and you have so many things, your 7-layer process, your embrace method, photo, all this cool stuff. So if they want to work with you, who do you like to work with? What do you do? And where can they find you?
Oh, sweet. Thank you for asking. So I'm Charlie Moon. My website is getcharliemoon.com. Okay. And the reason it is, for full disclosure, is Charlie Moon, I think when I was buying websites, was $2,300, and Get Charlie Moon was a lot cheaper. So I bought Get Charlie Moon, but I thought, that's a good mantra, is Get Charlie Moon. So go to that website, and you can download my book for free. You can buy it off Amazon if you want to, but you can download it for free. And there's a business development checkup on there. And what I would encourage everybody to do, what it does is it really sits you in your seat and makes you look at really what you're doing with business development. Because a lot of people, that's on the back burner because they don't want to go talk to strangers. They don't understand it. They may know a little bit about it. Chapter 10 is about working in your circle of competence and working in where you know that you know. Warren Buffett doesn't invest in businesses that he doesn't know that he knows. He invests in businesses that he knows. And so The business development checkup looks at people, plan, and process and helps you see if you're doing a great job or not doing a good job at all. And I've had companies that I work with score an 85 on that, and they had a few things that we could tune up and tinker with and make better. And then I've had organizations that scored a 23 and it was like, here's what, this is not good. And it divides it up so that it's manageable chunks so that they understand what they really need to do. So that business development checkup is out there. There's also one in my book. If you want to just do the paper copy and keep all those results to yourself, that's fine. But if they want to reach out to me on my website and email me, they can do that. It's charlie@getcharliemoon.com. And they can reach out that way. They can do that business development checkup. They can read the book for free, and to just be 100% honest 100% of the time, so 10,000% honest. If they can't figure out how to get a hold of me, we probably don't want to work together. That wasn't nice. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, blah, blah, all that stuff. So yeah, if somebody needs something, and welcome to email me and just ask questions, because I think we're all here to help each other. And the more we help each other, the better off we are.
Now, if somebody's listening to all this and they're like, okay, that offer sounds really good to go do the audit, but I done know I'm messed up. I was listening. I'm screwed up. Can we just fast track? What does working with you actually look like? Like how do you help people?
Yeah. So the first thing we like to do is do the business development checkup to see what's going on. And then the second thing we do is the visibility management piece of it. So if they are, say, a solo entrepreneur, or there's somebody that needs to be the face of their organization, we run an assessment and have them take this. And there's two kinds of traits that we look at in people. There are traits and there's do traits. And what this assessment does, and I've used it since 1991, that helps us understand what this person will do. Will they make their competency visible? Will they use the phone? Will they ask for referrals? Will they spend all their time getting ready? I mean, it goes through 21 different things. So we run those assessments and get a good look at what's going on, an objective viewpoint, because we've all hired salespeople that were not good salespeople, or as I was working with a commercial broker the other day, and he told me, he said, I'm real bad about letting myself off the hook. And I went back and, and we do. So this is a quantifiable look at not only the person of what's going on, but also, if we're hiring people, we get an objective viewpoint of them, because I used to do a workshop called How to Hire Salespeople Without Getting Sold, because they come in and sell us on why we should hire them. And I was talking to a guy that owned some radio stations one time, and he was eating his salad and he was looking down at the table. And I said, I used to do this workshop called How to Hire Salespeople Without Getting Sold. And he just looked up at me as like slow motion. I can still see his big smile and oh my gosh face, because he said, that's exactly what I do, because we want to hire them. We need somebody to do that because we don't want it. They don't want to go do it. So we'll get Mikey to eat it. Right. And so,
yeah.
So the first thing we have to do is to see if this person's going to make their competencies visible, and then we start the process. I also use coaching software that helps us with metrics. So we define some metrics in an individual development plan with this person, and they say, I want to do these 5 metrics. We want to do these 5 things, and we quantify behavior, and then we put them into the software, and then if they're doing them, it's green. And if they're not doing them, it's red. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I had about a 40-year-old CPA last summer tell me, she said, when I don't do it, it's red. And when I do what I'm supposed to do, which is what she committed to doing, she said, when I don't do it, it's red. And when I do it, it's green. And I just want green. I don't want red. And I thought that sounds so ridiculous from such a high-level professional, but it works. And so that's the individual development plan is important to their success. So
There's something about those colors and seeing the colors. Because, like, Digital Marketer does that. They have a marketing scorecard.
Okay. Yeah.
And then one of their other companies, Scalable, they have a company scorecard, and they do the same thing on both of them,
Interesting.
where you have your metrics, and then it can be dark green, light green, yellow, orange, or red, based on like how far or whatever. It's a little bit more than red and green. But he said they invested a lot of money to build software to automate that process, and they threw it away because it was more helpful if the person who owned the metric had to go to that spreadsheet and turn that thing red.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they would be just so motivated, because that would just feel bad.
That's what she told me. She said red is bad, green is good. I don't want any more red. And she didn't get any more red. And so we track that metric over the period of time that we work with each other. So if I'm working with somebody for 6 months, they know what happened 6 months ago. Because a lot of coaching, I use this software because a lot of coaching amounts to you and I talking about it and great intentions. And then I leave my coaching session I've had with you, and then life gets in the way and I get busy, and then I have great intentions. And then we get back together the next time and we go, now, what was I supposed to do?
Yep.
And so
that is so true.
Yeah. And what's
so true.
And the way this software works is I can set up a reminder that is emailed to you at 4:00 on Monday if we're going to talk at 10:00 on Tuesday, right? Or whatever. We can set this up so that they get reminders to go in and fill out their information. And I know that if our meeting's on Tuesday and they get their reminder on Monday, that on Monday they're running around trying to get it all done before Tuesday. And that's okay, because at least they're getting it done. And that's part of that embrace model. All those letters on the embrace model are small letters except A and C. And that A and that C stand for accountability and consistency. And we have, I'm not talking about kicking their desk and screaming at them for accountability, but just holding people accountable that you said you were going to do this, and then do it in a consistent manner and not letting people off the hook. And it works.
That goes such a long way. It's like I had one person on my team, I shared with you before the call, I'm putting myself through my own program, and my team's having to manage me as a client. And one of the girls, bless her heart, she was going to the doctor's office, and so she wasn't going to be available to nag me for something that needed to be done by like 5:00 on a Friday. She got real creative. She went and scheduled an appointment on my calendar, knowing that I pay attention to my calendar, that it drives what I'm doing in a day, and scheduled a 30-minute meeting so that my calendar nagged me while she was away.
Good job. Good job.
So it's like, and I was like, that's so creative. I have to reward you for that. So, and she blocked the time off.
Yeah.
There was 30 minutes. The thing I was supposed to do was going to take me about 30 minutes to do. I did it when my calendar said to do it. So it was such a weird little hack, a weird little accountability hack. It's like I've been bragging on her for an eternity for thinking on that one.
Don't share her name because somebody will recruit her. So
she'll probably be the one typing up the show notes for this episode. So she's going to hear that one and go, ha ha.
Gotcha. Yeah. It worked though, right?
It did. It did. Something. Yeah. It's funny, the little things that'll work. But, anyway, thank you so much for coming on and doing this today. I think your insights were so good, and stuff that it's the fundamentals that most people are getting wrong. And it's like, if you can fix the fundamentals, then you have a strong foundation to grow. And you shared so many great insights, fantastic stories in such an engaging way.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it more than you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this has been fantastic. This is like a great kind of end of my day over here.
Good deal.
This was great. So, well, entrepreneurs, guys, this is your call to take action. Head over to etatoday.zone and learn how to build a business that enables your lifestyle instead of taking over your life, with great experts like Charlie here, sharing lots of good knowledge. Until next time, guys. Bye.